Hello and congratulations on your purchase of DeFi Ledger 2.0. I'm recording this quick video to give you a quick rundown of the functionality it provides and, in general, how to use it. So, you will be greeted by this guidebook, which I spent a lot of time putting together, making sure that it really goes over everything that you need to know from the overview to instructions, the key assumptions and edge cases. And I made a bunch of accompanying videos that will help you navigate all of the intricacies of this product. FAQs, all the links that you need, and some referral codes if you are a um, avid DeFi user. Um, but let's get into the product itself. So the first tab is the ledger tab. This is where you effectively add, well, your ledger entries. All your buys, all your sells, all your deposits into various protocols, they all go in here. First thing that you need to know is what this position column um, is useful for. This is where you effectively add all your positions. Um, that might be, spot BTC here, spot ETH, Sol, wrap Bitcoin on Aave V3. Let's say that's something I'm lending out. So all of these things you put into this column. The conventions here, how do I, label, say, wrap BTC that I lent out on Aave? Well, to me, it's implied that it's wrap BTC on Aave because, well, Aave does one thing, and that is, facilitate lending and borrowing. So if I say wrap BTC on Aave V3, it's implied that, well, it's lent out. And if you want to um, have naming conventions that are more, say, comprehensive in the sense that, okay, Bitcoin, I don't know exactly where this Bitcoin is residing. Well, in comments, I can say, well, it's in cold storage, but if I want to have the um, have here BTC and in brackets Trezor, well, feel free to do that. The only I need to caveat this by saying that while naming conventions are in your hands, completely in your hands, the only thing that you are not to mess with are slashes. Slashes in particular, and what I mean by slashes is this thing right here, a slash. You will you can only use slashes for LPs. This is written about a little more in the guidebook why you don't mess with slashes in this column, but the sort of short answer is that the slashes, there's a lot of complex logic in this spreadsheet, and a slash is sort of construed upon by the spreadsheet as an LP position. So anything except for an LP position with a slash, well, sort of becomes an LP position even when it's not. So just be careful with slashes. Only have slashes for LP positions like here. But apart from that, naming conventions are up to you. And then let's say that my first ledger entry was on the 12th of December. I mean, sorry, on the 4th of December 2019. Again, this is a month, day, year formatting here. And here is the drop down, which is sourced from C8 to C. And let's say I bought Bitcoin on the 4th of December 2019. Let's say I put in 100K. I paid 65 in fees on the Bitcoin chain. It's not a reinvestment. Reinvestment, as I talked about in the guidebook, basically, okay, if I say use part of my salary to buy some Bitcoin, that is not a reinvestment. I'm using new funds to make that investment. But if I'm using old funds to make said investment, let's say that I bought Bitcoin in 2019 and I sold it in 2021. Well, in 2021, when I use that Bitcoin sold to buy, say, ETH or Sol or something along those lines, well, then that would be a reinvestment because that's not a fresh use of money. That's not income that I sort of amassed from my job or somewhere else. This is money coming from another position into another. So that is what reinvestment means. And everything else is straightforward. If you have any comments, say how many tokens you purchased. I find this to be especially helpful for LP positions. So if I say have an LP, I caveat this real quick by saying that this is not my ledger. These are just some presets that I have here to help you understand what some of the conventions are, some of the workflows are, and whatnot. And so I digress. Coming back to the comments, I especially find the comments helpful for an LP position where you are subjected to impermanent loss. You want to know exactly how many tokens you don't want to just know sort of the notional amount at the time you enter your position, as in the amount that you deposited into that LP. You want to know also how many tokens, how many of both tokens, or if it's a multi-asset pool, exactly what tokens were deposited, so that when you are withdrawing, you actually know how much sort of impermanent loss you faced. Um, but comments, you can effectively, well, here, if say I bought something on Coinbase and sent it to my Trezor, well, it's helpful to know here. And that's the comments. And here in my second ledger entry, let's say I bought another some more ETH, and then I withdrew some Bitcoin. So I took profit essentially, right? And I funneled that profit into Sol. As you can see, this becomes a reinvestment. And I can also mention that in comments. And then let's say I bought some more Bitcoin with some external source of funds. And then I withdrew, looks like I withdrew some more Bitcoin. So I withdrew Bitcoin from here, put it in Sol, withdrew Bitcoin from here, put it in, and then I lent it out on Aave. I mentioned this here. I wrapped some Bitcoin into wrap Bitcoin and lent it out. And then with new fresh source of funds, I created an LP position, got some more liquid staked ETH using Rocket Pool and put it into Eigenlayer, had some staked Frax Ether on Frax lent that out. All the comments are here. And some more Bitcoin on Aave. Looks like two positions. Looks like oh, sorry, this one is I withdrew some Bitcoin, and the reason this amount is much larger, this amount is because Bitcoin appreciated since then. I used ballpark figures here. Do not. This is just again for reference. And yeah, and then I reinvested that sum here, here, here. Again, this is just for the example. And yeah, that is effectively how you operate the ledger tab. This is pretty intuitive in my opinion. It is just okay. Each ledger entry, sort of, what did I do? I bought some Bitcoin. Okay. 2 months later, I withdrew that Bitcoin. So that's a withdrawal. And then I have a new ledger entry with ETH that's reinvested. And that's implied that, well, I took out Bitcoin, put in ETH. Um, and one more thing that's worth mentioning is, let's say that I withdrew some Bitcoin and put it in ETH, but I actually wrapped it and lent it out. So there are sort of a lot of steps there. So let's say that I wrap my Bitcoin or sell my Bitcoin on Coinbase, and then I might buy ETH, and then I sent it out to my cold wallet, and then I minted this LST, and then I say and then I lent it out on Aave. So a lot of steps here: approval, swaps, etc. So what I do, I effectively just combine them into two different entries into the ledger. So I sell Bitcoin, and then in the next tab, it's let's say staked ETH on Aave lent out. So it's ST ETH in brackets Aave V3, and that's the next one, and that row is reinvested, and I put the additional details in the comments, and the gas fees or whatever fees, let's say this fee has everything from the swap to the approval. Well, you just combine that into one basically. So that saves you a few different ledger entries. You don't want to be making a ledger entry effectively for each one. Imagine you have, here, let's say this is the Bitcoin withdrawal, and then you have an ETH purchase, and then you have a ETH withdrawal, and then you have a staked ETH purchase, and then you have a staked ETH withdrawal, and then you have a wrap Bitcoin, then you have a staked ETH on Aave deposit. So you don't want to go through that whole process, and you can effectively just simplify it for yourself by having all of those transactions as one. So that's how you operate the ledger tab. Again, there is one hidden column here, as explained in the guidebook. This is for the chain input. If the chains here don't support any of the chains you make transactions on, well, feel free to add as a non-numerical input, basically just text here, the chain that you want, and it'll show up here in the dropdown. And when you're not using it, I like to hide it for aesthetic purposes. That's the ledger tab. Moving on to overview. Overview has way less quote unquote stuff to do. So a lot fewer manual inputs. As you can see, these are all sourced. All of this is basically sourced from the ledger tab. The main input here is the current value. Is basically the notional value of sorts. I bought Bitcoin back then for 100K. What is it worth now? Well, it's worth 489K. Again, this is just an example, but now it's worth 489K, and then this computes for you. And this column is whether this position is closed or not. So as we saw in the previous example, well, I withdrew all my wrapped Bitcoin on Aave V3. So as you can see, I withdrew this much, and the differential between this and this is the PNL, as you can see here. Of course, a little more complex logic, but that's the gist of it. And well, the current value now is 0, and that turns into a closed position. And if you want to sort, let's say you have a lot of positions, it becomes quite cumbersome to sort through them manually, the closed positions, open positions. Presumably, you just want to see the open positions. So click on this button here, and the question here is closed question mark. So you want to select either false or true. Well, true means, so closed question mark, true. That means that you'll only see the closed positions if you click this. If you click both, you'll see both. And if you only want to see the open positions, well, you click false. For now, just keep them both, but that's the gist of it if you want to sort through them. And then you want to select sort of what risk this is. Well, I presume, Bitcoin is very low risk, and you choose between low, medium, and high. And here is LP asset ratio. So this one is, so while it's simple to understand and use, it's also pretty simple to mess up. Um, so if it's not an LP, so what is not LP? Is it a liquidity pool sort of position? Is it an LP? Well, Bitcoin isn't, ETH isn't, Sol isn't, this isn't, well, this is. And this is the only one, except for MSOL, Sol, and Camino, that is a position that is an LP in this particular example. So I'm assuming this is a uni V2 pool, which has a 50-50 LP asset ratio. And let's say this is a concentrated pool skewed toward Sol. So this has a 1090 LP asset ratio. And make sure that the ratios correspond to the order in which the assets appear. So here it's ETH DAI, not DAI ETH. So ETH has a 50% ratio, DAI has a 50% ratio. And here, MSOL has a 10% ratio, and Sol has a 90% ratio. So if this was written as Sol MSOL Camino, then this would be 90/10, not the other way around. Again, this is very important because there's a lot of logic in the spreadsheet that you don't see that helps it generate outputs that are based on some sort of logic, and that logic gets disrupted when you don't follow these conventions. And so coming back to LP asset ratio, one more thing that you need to note is that if it's not an LP, just say NA. And here, you don't want to represent it as a decimal, as a fraction, just if it's 50-50, well, it sort of adds up to 100. So what are the ratios? Just a number. And yeah. And then coming to these other two columns, lock time and unlock time. So here, the convention is, this is again all explained in the guidebook, but I'm just repeating myself here. But here, you want to make sure that all of the lock times and unlock times are represented in days. So if it's 1 year you locked something for, it's actually 365, and whatever number you have here, you want to follow that with a D. So if I locked something for 2 weeks, it's not 2 weeks, it's not 14, it's 14D. And if something doesn't have a lock time or unlock time, it's NA. And keep in mind that there is a distinction, of course, between lock time and unlock time. Lock time being, okay, let's say that you locked some tokens in some sort of gauge. Like, let's say you locked curve tokens for VECRV. Well, you can lock it anywhere between, I believe, 1 week to 4 years. So you want to convert the amount of time you locked it for to days, and then follow that with a little D, and that would be the lock time. But a lot of positions that you see, like, for example, I mean, if you stake Aave or you have deposits in Eigenlayer, there are a lot of positions generally in crypto that, well, you can enter that position and you're not locked up. You don't choose the amount of lock time. Well, but one thing, you are subjected to some sort of unlock time. Think of this as a cooldown period, especially if you're any on sort of any if you're on any proof of stake chains. If you sort of stake your tokens to the network or delegate, you have this unbonding period where, okay, for example, on Sol, it's one epoch to withdraw, but you're not actually locking up your Sol token. So that's the unlock time here. Again, same conventions, days followed by a D. So that's pretty much the overview section, not many manual inputs at all. And that is effectively those are the only manual inputs that you'll be making in the ledger tab and the overview tab. And as I sort of explained in the guidebook in the FAQ section, a good way to think about the difference between the ledger tab and the overview tab is that the ledger tab is for one-time inputs. Think about it. These don't change. You don't keep coming back here. If this is in 2019, there's no use for you to come back here and change things. Okay, it's sort of set in stone. Okay, I either bought Bitcoin on the 4th of December 2019 for this much money or I didn't, right? But here, things sort of keep changing. Risk is not static. It's sort of dynamic. It keeps changing. Maybe today Bitcoin is low risk, but tomorrow Bitcoin is medium risk. And maybe today the current value of my Bitcoin position is 10,000, but tomorrow maybe it's 15,000, maybe it's 20,000. So, and maybe today my Bitcoin position is open, maybe tomorrow it's closed. And the LP asset ratios also keep changing. Unless it's a formula like x into y is equals to k, a constant product formula. Well, it based on supply and demand. The underlying assets in the pool, the ratios keep changing. So again, LP asset ratio, you're going to have to keep changing. And what if you change your lock time for a position? That changes too. Same with unlock time. What if the protocol subjecting you to a lower lock time than when you initially entered that position? So I mean, these are not constantly changing, but these are dynamic sort of inputs. You can think of them as like that. So that's sort of the distinction between the ledger tab and the overview tab. So now moving on to breakdown. So there are a lot of helper columns here if you click on this, and I sort of explain that in another accompanying video that I make. But the main thing, so what exactly is breakdown, and what is the difference between a position and an investment? So the heuristic that I use. Okay, wait. Let me explain it like this. So a position is something like wrap Bitcoin lent out on Aave. But when someone imagine you have all your eggs in one basket, say Bitcoin, and all your Bitcoin is lent out on Aave. When someone asks you what do you invest in, you don't say wrap Bitcoin on Aave. You say, well, I am a Bitcoin guy. I'm a Bitcoin bull, and that is sort of the motivation for creating this breakdown for positions and investments. Position is something like a ETH on Fraxlend. It's something like a Sol on another protocol. But the investment is that broken down. So if I have wrapped Bitcoin on Aave, the investment just becomes, well, Bitcoin. If I have Sol on margin, well, that just becomes Sol. And then, more importantly, if I have ETH DAI, that's not ETH DAI as an investment. That's ETH based on the ratio. So in this case, 50%. So that LP position is not ETH DAI. It's 50% of that value is an investment in ETH, and 50% is in DAI. So that's sort of the breakdown here. So if you can see, it consolidates all your positions into investments based on very complex logic. You don't need to, of course, know the logic. You just need to know that, well, look, you see all of these Sol positions. Well, I have Sol here, I have Sol here, I have Sol here. Well, all of that gets consolidated into one Sol position. Well, I have Bitcoin here, I have Bitcoin here, I have ETH here, I have ETH here, I have ETH here. Well, that all gets consolidated down into one investment. That tells you, okay, well, it's not that I have it looks like I don't have a lot of ETH because each individual ETH position doesn't have that much value in it. But when you consolidate all of my ETH positions on these sort of disparate protocols, well, that it nets out to be a lot of ETH. So that's this breakdown tab. Again, no manual inputs required. And moving on to insights here too, no manual insights required. This basically gives you a lot of auto-generated text, basically based on your previous inputs. A lot of the key insights, I suggest you come here, check it out yourself. And total deposited, total invested. So these are a lot of the key insights, some visualizations, some investment analysis, all these sort of rationale, all the explanations are either here or in the guidebook. Some visualizations again, portfolio concentrations, top position concentration, top investment concentrations, again visualizations, and then some risk and lockup analysis. So what's the risk distribution? What is sort of going on with my lock positions? How liquid am I? This gives you an overview there. And here you can see maybe a few tabs at NA. And the reason they're NA is because, well, there are no 10 investments in this sort of example portfolio, and there are no 25 positions in this example portfolio. Once you do reach that amount, so if you can see here, this is the sort of concentration top 10, and there are no 10 sort of investments. So once you do get to that point, you will have these tabs generated, or these cells generated for you, just that we don't have enough data in the ledger. So risk and lockup analysis, and then here are some sort of portfolio highlights. Again, these are all auto-generated based on a bunch of data that we already inputted, and then some chain analytics. As you know, you chose which chains all your investments are on, so that gives you some more insights here as to total open investments, closed investments, profitable, unprofitable on each given chain. Again, there are only 3 chains here because again, we're not working with much data here. Just a few examples that I put together to sort of explain what's going on here and what you can do with this spreadsheet. And last but not least, this link will take you there, or you can just go to it here. This gives you a overview of your locked positions. What kind of positions are subject to some sort of illiquidity. Again, there's some helper columns here. You can just ignore them. And yeah, here it basically tells you what positions are unlocking in the next month, and there is some logic here wherein if there's a position that is already unlocked, so these unlocked dates are all in the future, but if there's a position that's already unlocked, it'll let you know here so that you don't miss it. There's been a lot of instances in my sort of crypto journey where I had a position unlocked. I didn't know it was, opportunity cost, of course, of that capital. And yeah, it would have been nice for me to know that, hey, these positions are open, and in the next month, what positions are opening, so that I can anticipate the unlock and plan into the future. Okay, what am I going to rotate this capital into? So that's the lock position overview here. Again, no manual inputs required. It's nice because a lot of these different tabs have auto-generated outputs. They're all dynamic, and the only two tabs that require any manual input are, of course, the ledger tab and the overview tab. The ledger tab requiring sort of the more of the manual inputs, and overview tabs some recurring updates on the sort of inputs, if that makes sense. So I hope that served as a good explanation of the DeFi Ledger 2.0. Again, any questions you have, all of the contact details are left in the guidebook. I'd be happy to walk through anything. And yeah, I hope you find the ledger useful. Have a good day.